So, hello everybody. We are very glad that you are here on a Friday noon at the end of the conference nearly. I would like to welcome as well the Zoom participants on the screens at home. We are here in three person. My colleague Marita Böttcher will introduce herself a bit later, and that's my colleague Heinrich Reck from the University of Kiel. The title of our workshop now is the priorities to overcome fragmentation effects caused by European transport infrastructure. And we want to introduce to you the content and the development of the European Defragmentation Map. This is a work we are doing within the Baierl project. You heard a lot about this project within the Horizon 2020 program, but actually we are working a bit longer on that map, on the compilation of important ecological data since 2015 actually, and it starts all with a workshop on the island of Film in Germany, and in between we did continuously work on this map, but with a very small budget and a very low manpower. But all was funded and contributed by the Federal Agency of Nature Conservation in Germany, Marita Böttcher. We appreciate her work on this. The inclusion into the Baierl project opened very new and expanded processing opportunities for us to work on this map, and we are glad to present you now the current state. So I give the floor first to my colleague Heinrich Reck, who will talk a bit about the integration into the Baierl project.
Yeah, I will talk too long, but first of all, good day and welcome from my side too. And as Cindy already said, this workshop is connected with Baierl Work Package 5, Task 5.2, Roadmap to Planning Guidelines for Pan-European Defragmentation Deployment of Recommended Practices Assignable for Different Ecoregions. And this task is divided into two subtasks, and for the subtask on the right, 5.32, the responsibility is mainly with Marita Böttcher and me. I'm a landscape ecologist and planner from Kiel University, but you know this already. And this subtask is about methods and information for planning. There are 3 steps, or what we do will be done in 3 steps. The first is we will find out what must we know from strategic environmental assessment to impact regulation, or respectively from the scales from 1 to 5 million to the scale of 1 to 5,000. The second step is, what do we really know, for example, about risk severity or about biodiversity indicators, again, from this European Defragmentation Map up to or down to grasshopper gills. It's always depending which indicator is the best on the planning scale. You didn't hear me until now. So 3 steps. First is what must we know, the second step is what do we know, and the third step is what research is mostly needed to fill knowledge gaps with respect to practical planning. And then the subtask on the left, the responsibility for that is mainly with Marita Böttcher and Cindy Baierl. That is this wide compilation for one specific indicator, this EDM, and this workshop will only be about that coming indicator, and so I will be later just the secretary looking up the information coming from the outer space or from the internet, and so I leave the floor for one slide to Marita.
Thank you, Heinrich. I introduce myself. I'm Marita Böttcher from the Federal Agency of Nature Conservation, and my colleagues introduced what is my job in the Bison project. Okay, so very short, what we want to do now in this workshop. First of all, we think that you need a good presentation to understand what we have done. This is first the state of the development, then the criteria to identify and prioritize the defragmentation sections. And the third are examples from 5 countries with different networks approaches. For this, we have handouts, and I will give you them when Cindy presents. Then we will have the discussion about the criteria by these exemplary countries. We will have the discussion of the further development, that means research and development needs for the map with respect to the European Defragmentation Map, EDM, in European scale, not lower. This is not possible here. Yes, and that's it from my side. So Cindy, please take the floor.
Thank you, Marita. Yeah, first I want to introduce to you why are we doing working on such a defragmentation map. As you know, the expansion of the Trans-European network is in full swing. So until 2020, the core and the comprehensive network will be fully developed. That's the aim of the policy. And yeah, why the European Trans-European Transport Network is in that great development. The aim is here that the implementation and development of a Europe-wide network of railway lines, roads, inland waterways, maritime shipping routes, ports, airports, and railroad terminals. And here, mainly to the eastern part of Europe, the objective is to close gaps and to remove bottlenecks within the transport infrastructure, and as well as strengthen the social, economic, and territorial cohesion in the EU. Yeah, through these transport infrastructure development, we expect huge impacts on important ecological structures. And as you know, the one aim of the European biodiversity strategy is to create and to integrate ecological corridors as part of the Trans-European network nature, to prevent genetic isolation and to allow species to migrate and to maintain and enhance healthier ecosystems. And yeah, these two developments are struggling with each other. That's why we want to contribute to the avoidance of any significant further barrier effects caused by the TEN-T upgrades and new constructions. And the main output of the map development will be a basic set of defragmentation sections we identified throughout Europe. And yeah, we are going to make recommendations how to deal with these defragmentation sections. First, I want to excuse the bad quality of the slides. We have it here in a good quality, but I'm very happy that we have the handouts that you can see details of the map later on. A short words about the working principle to the development of the European Defragmentation Map. First, we are processing and presenting the current state of ecological networks on European terrestrial territory. We included national data as well as international data for several biographical regions. And we include the Natura 2000 network and selected national designated areas. For both protected area backdrops, there are databases provided by the European Environmental Agency. They're very annually updated, and anybody can use it, and we use it as well. The second is the identification of the impact severity and of defragmentation priorities on international, respective European level. And our workshop today will focus on suitable criteria for the evaluation and identification of defragmentation priorities on this level. Yes, as I mentioned before, for the result we expect a basic set of fragmentation areas. But these has to be further qualified by the countries under the usage, of course, of more expert knowledge and of further data analysis. And yeah, for prioritization, there's a need of coordination between the countries. Here you can see an overview of the criteria for the countries where we have ecological networks. Currently, we could collect ecological networks from 17 European countries with a different quality. Mainly we can use GIS data or vector data, but we have also raster data, which are a bit complicated to analyze and to fit into the map, but we try our best. And here you see that for assessing the significance of ecological structures, we are looking at the overlay between very effective 10T network elements and the habitat networks of the countries. In addition to this, and maybe to weighten the sections, that identified sections, we check the affection of Natura 2000 sites and national strictly designated areas. For assessing the barrier effect of transport infrastructure, we use different types of linear infrastructure. These are several kinds of roads, rails, inland waterways, and we consider as with a high priority for the ranking of the defragmentation effect, the bundling of transport infrastructure. To this I will tell you more later on. Regarding the different ecological network elements, I will show you some different, I don't know if you can see anything here on these maps, but I describe to you as best I can. We have different corridor types. These are, on the one hand, you see it on the left-hand side. These are linear axes or focal lines. So some countries have just marked them. These are focal lines and not area-based. They put in expert criteria like largely straight continuity of long migration access routes, for example, or lowest migration resistance or shortest possible distances between sources and destination areas. For example, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Spain have these types of ecological corridors. Yes, and we consider them as potential, or they are considered as potential or best functional connections between core areas. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, you can see the Czech ecological network consisting of area corridors. That means they are really suitable for migration and dispersal of species or species groups. Czech has these done or identified for large mammals, for example. We have such kind of area corridors as well in Estonia. And, for example, the Carpathian corridors have as well these area corridors. I told you before that we have not for every country such ecological networks. So we have to think about which criteria we could use to not leave parts of the map, especially in the eastern part, white or without any data or any results. For the area without ecological networks, we are using the area backdrops of protected areas, the Natura 2000 sites, and here just the Habitat Directive sites. And we use the area backdrop of strictly national protected areas. And for the ranking, we thought about using the fragmentation index. I will tell you more about this later. For assessing the barrier effect of transport infrastructure, we are using the same categories of transport infrastructure like before. So the barrier effect of TEN-T, here you can see some examples, or the examples we put in the map. These are we consider these are the transport infrastructures with the greatest barrier effects. Motorways, for example, rural road with separate directions, which are have nearly the same width as motorways. We consider high-speed rails. That means traffic, where the traffic and speeds is reached up to 250 kilometers per hour or more, and we consider inland waterways. The inland waterways we couldn't distinguish between different types because the attributes of the database of the TEN-T doesn't allow a specification, so we put all waterways in it, even if they are natural ones. The bundling of the TEN-T we consider with the highest priority for defragmentation. Bundling means that we have a parallel or tangential running transport infrastructure, and we take here a distance into account of 150 meters. So we buffered the routes and the tracks. We had a longer discussion about the distance of bundling, and we discussed it in several workshops we had within the Bison project. And nearly 1/3 of the barrier effective TEN-T sections are bundled. Why the highest priority for defragmentation? Because we think it's nearly a full barrier for terrestrial species because of the width, the area consumption, and the protective devices between the different transport modes. And that's important to keep in mind that we have special requirements for fauna passages because of the width. So here we have on the lower picture an example how the width increases when you have to pass or to overcome two transport modes. And in Germany, is it not really clear who's responsible for this defragmentation measure over bundled transport modes? And here we need real functioning fauna passages. So now I show you the examples we prepared for you. That's an overview. During I tell you something about the selected examples. Marita will give you some handouts, and please use these to look at the detail of the map because it's not visible. It will be not visible on the screen in a good quality. So we will introduce to you the Czech Republic with its ecological networks consisting of core areas, area corridors, and defragmentation measures. Then we have Austria with these linear corridor types I explained to you before, and as well defragmentation measures. We have Romania as an example with Carpathian corridors consisting of core areas and area corridors. We have Greece, a country without any national ecological network. And last but not least, Spain, with core areas consisting of just forested Natura 2000 sites and linear corridors between these areas. So on the first side of your handout, you see the very effective 10T, so that you can keep it in mind what you considered in the map. And yes, I will fast go through these examples. We prepared here 2 slides for every country. On the first slide, you always have an overview of the whole country with the integrated data. And then you see the red point, and here we zoom into the map. I hope the online participants have a good quality on the screen of the map, and you're very, very welcome to write your comments and questions in the chat. For the discussion later on, you have the possibility to put some notes on the second part of the slides of each country. So there's an empty space. Please write your comments, ideas, that we can discuss it later. So, as I mentioned before, the biotop network of the Czech Republic is especially for protected species of large mammals on national importance. We are lucky to have our Czech colleagues here and in the Bison working group who are updating us with the data and give recommendations. A great thanks to Vasek on this point. We have in the very eastern part of Czech Republic as well the Carpathian, a part of the Carpathian corridors, but they are fitting very well with the national network, so that we focus on this network. Yeah, we have here core areas, as you see on the darker green. Okay. Yeah. So we have the core areas and the area migration corridors, which were, as I mentioned before, designated as surface of suitable habitats, interlinking core areas. And the Czech Republic has identified problematic sites. You see them in a pink color here, marked as critical sites, which have limited landscape permeability. Sometimes this permeability is limited or totally interrupted. And when with the overlay with the 10T, you see it as black lines, and hopefully you can see the turquoise marked sections for defragmentation. We have a totally overlay here of 180 intersections. 53 of them are fitting or are at the same place like the already identified critical barrier sites. And I hope you can see as well the aqueducts, especially in the area around Prague. So when we zoom into an area in the eastern part of the Czech Republic, it's an area between 2 cores. That's on the one hand the military training area of Libava. I don't know if it's a former one or is it still in use. I'm not sure. Still in use, okay. And the White Carpathians on the border to Slovakia. And you see here one existing transport infrastructure that is a planned high-speed rail going from the west to the east, right through in a very straight direction. So this is a planned construction, and as you can imagine, the detailed route is not fixed yet. So we could have here a discussion about the exact route. And you see as well on this map section some critical sites which are already designated. And we have one example, we have existing wildlife crossing matching the section we identified as a critical one. So we could think about, in this example, how to deal with sections where we have already defragmentation measures. Yeah, that is the first example. I forgot. You see on the right-hand side the criteria we used. We have here no bundled sections in the Czech Republic, and when we look at the affection of Natura 2000 areas, there are 30 of 180 sections, identified sections, are affected, and just 6 of the strictly national protected areas. The second example is Austria, with its area corridors, as you remember. This is a complete network of international wildlife corridors, which was built or publicated in 2016. Here, connections to existing concepts of neighboring countries are considered. So that's a special thing. Not every country has this. And this network is for indicator species of forest preferring large mammals like red deer, wild boar, brown bear, wolf, and lynx. And these are all species which are in need of large-scale migration and have a wide action range. These corridors are linear axes of dispersal and movements crossing the country and provide the connectivity to the countries abroad. Austria also defined critical barrier sites where there are bottlenecks in the network, and they have a differentiation between in the corridors. There are intact corridors, impaired corridors, and largely interrupted corridors. In the overlay with the barrier effective 10T, we have in a sum 122 intersections, and thereof 60 critical barrier sites which are already identified. Now let's take a closer look to the northeast of Austria. We are in a border situation to Czech Republic and Slovakia. That's the Danube region northwest of Vienna. We have here the Danube going through that area. This is actually an inland waterway in the 10T network with a completed status. We have here, you can see the area, the focal lines, the linear corridors, and our buffer of 2,000 meters, or so that we have a width of 4,000 meters for these corridors. So, and here we checked the overlay. You see here, for example, a rural road, which has already 3 defragmentation measures realized, and we have then the barrier of the Danube, for example. Here on the right side, we have a motorway, which is already completed, and you see, I hope you see it on the handouts, a lot of defragmentation measures on that route, but not in the section we identified through the overlay with the 10T. Yeah, we proved, we checked here as well the affection of the protected area backdrops. Yes, and we found out that 4 defragmentation measures overpasses are in the identified sections. The third example is Romania. We have here not national corridor system, but the now well-known Carpathian corridors. These data are from 2021, provided by the WWF to our project. This is an ecological network for large carnivores like wolf, lynx, and bears in the Carpathians, consisting of favorable and suitable habitats of movement and migration zones. These are the corridors and critical zones. The movement migration zones including linkage areas, corridors, and stepping stones, which fulfill the migration requirements of species in a sufficient way. And within the Transgreen project, critical zones are identified which represents localities with significant limitations of the land permeability due to the difficult passable migration barriers. In the overlay with this network, we found out 404 defragmentation sections. More than half of it are in suitable habitats, and one half are in overlay with the migration corridors. One problem we have here in Romania, that the Carpathian corridor covers just part of Romania, and the southern and the eastern part is not represented with any data. So the question is here how to deal with this lack of data, or the lack of corridors. We zoom here into an area north of us. We have there's a map section located northwest of Cluj, with the Apuseni Mountains in the south and the Transylvanian Plain and the Najaut Plateau in the east. Here is an upgrade planned of the TEN-T network. This street, it's a rural road with separate directions. It's under construction, and they build it actually. And yeah, here you see that we found out overlays and intersections with some corridor areas, which has been already identified as critical barrier sites. Yeah, the question I told you now, I told you already, you can see already as well on the handouts on the right-hand side. So maybe we can speak about it later. Yeah, then we have an example without any ecological network, that is Greece. So here, we had to think about which data we can use for such kind of countries without any network. And these are, this data lake could fill the Natura 2000 database and the area of restricted national protected areas. We tried here the overlay, or we did here the overlay with a very effective TEN-T. And we found out for both area backdrops nearly 200 intersections. And well, we thought about how could we weight these intersections. And one possibility could be the usage of the fragmentation index. The fragmentation index was developed by Coast Office in 2006. And this index can tell us if a main part of an area is fragmented or a less significant part is fragmented. And we put the index Werte. The index, was heißt denn Werte? We sorted them into 5 classes, fragmentation index classes, and the higher the fragmentation index class, the more significant the fragmentation is. And as you see here on the example, we have just a few areas with a high fragmentation class. So that could be one possibility to weight and to prioritize the determined intersections. I hope you see it proper on the handouts. We zoomed here into an area east of Thessaloniki. We have been there actually within the Bison workshop in this spring. And you see here a new planned high-speed rail crossing right through a Natura 2000 site. We have here a high fragmentation index, so we would rank these intersections as very high in comparison to some lower ranked intersections on the eastern side of this map section. This high-speed rail is a new construction and it's planned, so maybe there can be some changes in planning. We have in this area as well a national park. It's a CDDA area, or a strictly protected area, but in this case an undefined category. So we used special IUCN categories, but this is an undefined, but we left this in the area backdrop. And we have here a completed motorway with a Via Egnatia. Nikki is responsible for this motorway route. And yeah, all these intersections in this area have a high fragmentation index because the routes going right through the protected areas. The last example before we are going to start into our discussion is Spain. We have here a network of ecological corridors developed by the WWF in 2018. This network is linking woodland habitats, that means forests and shrubs of Natura 2000 sites on the Iberian Peninsula. And they are mapping priority ecological corridors and critical areas, bottlenecks, for connectivity along the corridor pathways. Yeah, the corridors are essential to guarantee large-scale movement of a representative groups of forest mammals, and yeah, they also account transnational corridors into through Portugal, France, and Andorra. We identified, we did the same like in Austria and other countries with linear corridors. We buffered them with 2,000 meter, and we got here 600 defragmentation sections in Spain. Yeah, these are all priority corridors affected by the TEN-T. Therefore, abroad 56 and 116 are laying in already identified critical zones. We move here into, oh, I didn't mark that. We move here into the western part of Spain on the border to Portugal. Here you see two very effective TEN-Ts. This is one planned high-speed rail. This is an upgrade, so the track already exists, but will be upgraded for the high speed. And we have a road type which is undefined in our database, but yeah, we left it in, and it's a bigger road which is already completed. And here we have a bundled section, so you can see it on the map. In the corridor area, these both transport modes are running parallel within a distance of maximum 150 meters. What you see here as well is a very special data set we got from our Spanish colleagues from CAME. These are cattle trails or transhuman trails. We could take into account to weighten the defragmentation sections. Yeah, the problem here in Spain is that the corridors we have here, or we can work with, are just represented for a small piece of, or a part of ecosystem for the wooden ones, and we have no other. How should we deal with this problem? And yeah, could be the cattle trains or the transhumans be an opportunity, or offer an opportunity to weighten the sections. So, yeah, these are the prepared examples. I hope you could follow through the handouts through this presentation. Here is an overview of all the integrated ecological networks. You can see we have some gaps left, as I mentioned, especially in the eastern part of Europe. Yeah, and now we could start with a discussion, with your questions, with your remarks, suggestions, and yeah, everything. Thank you. Do you have understanding questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I wonder, what are you going to do with this map? Because I think it might be interesting to go to the EC, or to see to it that in some kind of EU subventions like LIFE and Interreg, you might call for the possibility to give subventions for projects which can attribute to defragmentation.
Yeah, you're right. We are going to provide this map to the EU Commission, of course, in the hope that maybe it could be used with further qualifications, of course, to found the main defragmentation measures of European importance. And I think as far as we have no ecological corridor system on European scale, this is a very worthwhile database to show them that there's a lot of important ecological structures developed by the country, and these are showing the expertise of the countries which develop their ecological networks. So our intention is to provide a web map, an application for this, to use this map to see the defragmentation sections, to find maybe an own solution, which section should be the most worth for looking further and for planning defragmentation measures.
Just noch a little bit comment to this. We want not only to stimulate LIFE or other research projects, we want first to stimulate the Ministry of Transport, and especially the EU DG Environment, to finance these measures which are prior due to the TEN-T, because if you can see that you damaged something, then you have to avoid this in the first step. And I think it is not it is worth enough that the EU transport, DG Transport finances this first.
Thank you. This is really interesting work, and I think it can really be a strong communicative tool. And I realize that it's in an early stage, but still I have some, I think, key questions that we need to address. Fragmentation for what? Is it for biodiversity, or what is it a fragmentation for? What, do you have any answer to that?
Well, for migration species and for the biodiversity in a whole.
So
I think
also
it's
for
important.
insects?
As well, yeah.
Because then I would say that I don't think it will work just looking on protected areas. Then I would look strongly on cumulative effects in the landscape as a whole. And I think you will never show that with just looking on protected areas. Because if you have a lot of urban areas, a lot of agriculture, and then you will actually see that how big the barrier will be in the final end will actually depend a lot about the cumulative effects in the landscape. Much more than just how big the road is, for example.
Yeah, if no one else has a question. So, as Marita said, it's maybe stimulating a European defragmentation program. It can be used as a first step in strategic environmental assessment, looking at the TNT, the European level. And the poor thing is, what Cindy showed us is that is what we, not we, but we Europeans have. And because it's part of the Bison project, from that on we can say what we must have, not only for SEA, but to develop a real functioning network from reindeer, red deer, whatever, depending on the ecoregion, up to Sagapedo that we saw that could be a target species for such a network in parts of southern and eastern Europe. And the next step is you need, or you have to include those nationally developed eco-networks or corridor systems, and every member state of the European Union is obliged to give such a network within the next 3-4 years to the European Commission. But as you see, it's completely incoherent, and so we have to think about what should we do to have such a coherent network, looking at habitat distances, looking at habitat topology with respect, for instance, to the topology of different land use. And so maybe someone of you or someone else will develop such a coherent informational network as a mirror to that what the different member states at the moment can give to the EU.
Can I just, a short comment, I'll keep it short. I just think that during the evaluation of this progress and this really nice work that you're doing, we have to be clear what we can say now and what we would like to say tomorrow.
Yeah. That will be the last discussion point. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you. Andrei Kovachev, Bulgarian Biodiversity Foundation from Bulgaria. I would like to ask if the methodology used in different countries to develop network of biocorridors is similar and comparable, and if there is any international standard which was used, or it's they use some national standards for each country different. And also I would like to highlight the problem with not only with woodland species but also steppe species, because they really need different type of biocorridors, and it's a serious problem, I think, because we are in most cases looking just at forest related species, and by identifying such corridors it is important really to have the species as key argument that we need such corridors, but not, for example, geographical borders, because geographical borders sometimes are not quite correct. Yeah, thank you.
So I start with the first question. Yeah, every country developed their own network and own methodology and standard. So sometimes these networks are developed bottom up. So, for example, France did the development from the bottom up. So the regions are responsible for the network development, and then it was put together to a national map. Julie, you agree? And yeah, so that's why even in one country the structures are very different. So yeah, there's no international standard for developing.
Possibly, I have a question from Thor Denneboom.
What we have to answer the second part. Could you? Sorry, could you repeat the second part, please?
It was rather not a question, just notice that we really should look also at the species which are related to woodland habitats and to steppe habitats separate, because they are different species, and to develop such network of corridors for them as well. Thank you.
We have these corridor systems, for example, in Germany. So we have different corridor types for woodlands, for wetlands, and for dry habitats. But that's not common for other networks.
Maybe I can explain something too to the map. We have a layer or a description for every type of these networks. So if you read it and you not only see it, you see how this network is developed, and you can phone the one who is responsible for that.
So before reading the question of Thor, what you say is what we really need throughout Europe, and that's the intention of this map, to see what we don't have. And I think the question of Thor Denneboom is in the same direction. So I read it. Is it wise to put on the same map results from very different types of corridor mapping, some based on very limited information and analysis of wildlife corridors? Is it wise?
Well, at the moment, it's our own option, our only option to show this compilation. That's an easy answer.
Yeah, maybe this is, as you said, the only one we have, and I think we have not to think about how we use this in the real planning process. Much more, we have to think that this is a sign for the politicians to show here in Europe, species need to migrate, need mobility, and look, here is this 10T, and this 10D damages this network, because I think this is not in the mind. And with such a picture, you can show it much more easier as you do with many, many words.
And we want to avoid, let me add that to Marita's talk, the European Union always focus on Natura 2000 area. So, and this is a patchwork and not a network. And here, these networks are really networks. Although some of them are potential ones, but they are networks.
Thank you, Marita. On the first day, I think it was Anders, we talked about I think it's a concept for the moment, the 10N project. So for me, do you intend to draw some most important networks to rebuild at countrysides or European side in order to show where to start to repair first? And Yes, I have another question, more concrete, regarding where you said who is responsible for the fragmentation measures. And when I have a look at the example in Greece, you show that there is a project, a planned highway, high-speed rail, which passes through a Natura 2000 site. So
Yes, that's right.
there's a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
So either they pay for the defragmentation they create, or this map helps to prevent them to pass in the Natura 2000 sites. And the third one, do you have, are there a section of marine routes between some parts of Europe in the defragmentation map?
Okay, I start with the first question. The prioritization of defragmentation sections are only based on the very effective 10T, and the different ranking. I wouldn't do so to do a prioritization of eco corridors of the countries. I'm not that expert for this. I believe that the countries develop their network with a huge expert knowledge, and that must be enough for our work. And we have to, we are dealing with all networks in the same way. I think through the highlighting of these future dissection of a worthwhile Natura 2000 area, I think we couldn't prevent the development of the high-speed rail. But maybe they think about it, go a bit on the edge of that area, or maybe in an area which is not that worth for biodiversity.
Just an answer to that. We have the European directive about habitat, the fauna-flora habitat directive, and they have to avoid. This is legislation.
To mitigate.
And maybe we can foster that with that map, but this is not the task we want to focus. We focus on the migration corridors between, or on the connectivity for species. And maybe we can give that to the planners or the NGOs, not we, but they can use it to say, here we have a problem, you have to do something. But this is not our intention to work with Natura 2000 itself. There is something there. The problem is that we, in our European legislation, have only Article 10 in the Habitats Directive, which is very weak and doesn't work. And for the direct connectivity things, we have no regulation on European level.
Was it the answer? Are you okay with it?
Marine routes, of course not too far, but in Europe.
Yeah, the marine routes are integrated, are considered as very effective. So we have just a few, maybe. I can show you a map, but you won't see it properly. This is the map of the TEN-T, and here, in a better quality in my screen, I can see red lines. These are the inland waterways. But that's a network which is not very dense, the inland waterways.
I know.
You can start, or whoever. Oh, so I start with a comment from Tro Dennebaum against. So Tro writes to us, so perhaps this can be, it's a comment, this map can be used not only to promote defragmentation, but also to highlight where further connectivity analysis is critical. And exactly, that is one important intention of this map. as already an answer to Tro's comment. But on the other hand, it's really important to highlight where there are already problems with existing transportation infrastructure. Not only looking if we have such a new railway, high-speed railway line, how we can minimize the effect, but to go to the already existent highways. And for new transportation infrastructure, at the moment we have planning systems in the European Union to find out corridors, not for species, but corridors for transportation infrastructure. And the concentration on biological corridors is when these corridors are defined. And if we can mirror in future the TNT with such a really good corridor system, looking at all ecosystem types and at all affected guilds of species, from the very beginning, such transportation infrastructure plans can be different. So that's to Trenebau and to our discussion, and we can switch.
Thank you. Just one more question. Will be your map internet-based as well in certain way, for example, internet GIS, etc.?
Yeah.
And will be possible also to upgrade it?
To rate?
To upgrade it in some way, for example, data from other projects, countries, etc., to be added in the future.
Actually, we are working on that map until 2023 in summer. But what is going later on with the map, I don't know yet. We are financed with the Bison project framework, and what's going on further in the future, we don't know. But hopefully, it will be hosted anyway from. I don't know.
My question yesterday, we had the talk in the morning from the lady from the Natural Connect, and therefore I asked her, do you use the results of the Bison project? And I think they should use these results to improve their results.
We have one more slide. You are very welcome to look at, or think about ideas for improvement. We have a lot. We just put here the main things regarding the content, the significance, and the external communication strategy for publishing this map and the contents. So, one main question is how can we fill more the data lakes? Is it a good option to use the protected area backdrops, Natura 2000, for example? Which data, that's a question concerning this as well, which data could be used to address, to maintain the unfragmented regions, especially in Eastern Europe? So can we use the map? I think we won't use to prevent fragmentation, but to decrease the effects of these fragmentations. We know that we have to consider target species or target species groups of European importance, but which are they? It couldn't be the Annex 4 species of the Natura 2000 Habitats Directive. Yeah, and we would love to use migration corridors for herds, large mammals, or other species groups, but there's no databases. Do you have any ideas regarding these three themes for the improvement and the further development of the map? Or wishes?
Thank you. Andreas Schalk from IPTE. I was working many years with the European Commission in big projects, connected cars, vehicles. My experience is this is a very important topic to have this map, and one of the most important things is now to start as a community, how to maintain, how to keep it alive, this map and the data. If you know, the awareness, it will disappear if no one is responsible for it. I don't know. We had the same problem with the connected cars. Who is maintaining databases and security issues and so on. Finally, the car manufacturer took over the ownership of this. But in our case, we don't have big stakeholders with a lot of financial power behind. Nevertheless, the importance of this topic is very high, and we have to discuss this with the European Commission and to find a solution for some instance to maintain the database.
Yeah, info.
I have, of course, a question on transport infrastructure. That's what you can expect from me. When looking to the examples you provided on the papers, I wonder what was the criteria for some TEN-T roads or railways to be included as an effective barrier, and why other ones are only under all types and modes? Because I didn't find the rule. That's okay. First part. And second part, why you used for high-speed railway network in Eastern Europe just the indication of connections, because even I just looked at the TEN-T maps on EU website. It is just the link between two cities. In real, the planned road will be quite different.
Yeah. We got the database of the TEN-T from the European Union, and that's what we can, it's the base we are working with. It was hard to get this data set at all. So we are glad to work with it, and we are aware of difficulties and within this database. We miss proper descriptions. I have no data, metadata of these. I've no description of the type of roads, for example. So there are definitions on European level and publications to this, but not to every type of road. So actually I had to look up a lot of examples of roads which are undefined or defined maybe as rural roads. And we made the decision internal and with experts on workshops, and we decided to take the roads with the greatest barrier effects, with the highest width, with the highest density of traffic, and with the most devices as well. With the rails, for example, the high-speed rails are often fenced, as you know, not in Germany but in France, for example, and other countries. And the protection devices are here as well higher than in conventional rails, and we decided to switch the conventional, but we considered them in the bundling, so they are not lost as an information, but you see how many defragmentation sections or search sections for measures we found out, and we had to skip some not that fragmentation effective structures.
Okay, I understand, but still, for example, from my country, from some of motorways are included, some of motorways are not.
Yeah, because if they are not a part of the TEN-T,
They are.
They are,
I just
okay,
look into the map.
Okay, okay.
And it's even in these official maps on the EU portal. I think you work with the base of these maps, and they are here.
So there's these difference. I don't know. Okay,
I can show
okay.
you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a fault of every data. We have to believe in the data, but we have to check the data.
For your data, you also selected the nature areas, existing nature areas, but for example, in the Netherlands, we also create new nature areas. So I think it's important, because I think this map will last for maybe 50 years or even longer, to update also not only new roads, but also new nature areas.
Mm-hmm. So the CTDA database is, I think, annually actualized by the countries. They are forced to, and one possibility could be to automatically download the current data set.
Yeah. Including also new green bridges and so on. Yeah.
We have to keep it in mind. Yeah. Thank you. Other comments? Other ideas?
Hello, Nicolas from France. Thank you very much for your work. It was very impressive. I think when you transmit this map to the European Commission, one very important thing to say is also the heterogeneity of the data of the different ecological networks, and perhaps to submit the idea to work towards standardization or harmonization among the different member states, because otherwise it would be very difficult to say something, and it could also be counterproductive. Some land or some country could decide to simplify their ecological networks, and in order to have less, defragmentation measure to put in place. So I think it's really important that every country proceed in the same way. And so I think it's a very important finding of your work, or, that you could transmit to the European Commission.
I think that is an important future task, and the first step is made with the European biodiversity strategy and the target to have and to protect ecological corridors of European importance. But from our point of view, it will take a long time to develop this standard or methodology, and to have coherent system of corridors representing all the ecosystems. And we have to provide good guidelines for usage of the map. That's right.
But sorry, I come back to my second point, because I think that makes links with the comment by Nicolas. Of course, you said you leave the countries decide, but don't you think it would be efficient that you propose some prioritization of where to start, what are the most important problems to solve, because you have the European vision with your map, or just because there will be a question of money at the moment, so they will have also to decide where to start, and also to suggest some prioritization of where to start or to put the money first.
Yeah, that's a hard decision. We have a lot discussion about it. If we should prioritize the sections in a very detailed way, or if we should provide additional information that the European Union can decide which sections are the most important.
But I think at the moment that will come, this question.
Yes, you are completely right. We can give a short answer that could be the bundling as a first step, because there you have a real barrier. Nothing will manage that. And then you have to look. And I think for the future, it is important in the end as an R&D thinking that we have to bring the nations together to have maybe a working group which looks across border sections. That could be the next step. And then more and more develop a network. But I want not to say that it must be harmonized in a way that everyone uses the same method, because you have to realize that these corridors or network corridors of the nations respond to their legislation, and we cannot all make similar. There are differences in the legislation, and maybe we have to think about that. What kind of legislation on EU level is the best? But this is something we will see in the future. This is in the moment. Maybe we can create migration corridors for some standard species, not only from the Habitats Directive, but from European importance, from common species. But this is a new discussion, and we can't solve this. But we will focus on it and write it down.
So I think we have 2 minutes left. Is that right?
That's exactly right. We don't need all the minutes, or we have some more. I have to clear one question. That is, Cindy, your slides will be available in a higher resolution for the participants?
Of course.
And do we have already a way to give them to the audience, especially
I have
our
no problem.
colleagues?
I have no problem to spread that presentation.
Okay. So the slides will be available. Maybe if we are coming to a closing, I will start to thank you for your participation, of course, and as the side person in this subtask, I think your comments were backing up to really promote on the European community the need of a European-wide connectivity analysis, as told us, or fragmentation analysis too, but on a better scientific way, not just putting pictures together. That's the best we can do at the moment, of course. So thank you, and I think Marita and Cindy have more to tell.
I make it very short. Thank you that you were here and that you help us.
Yeah, and I would like to thank all the contributors so far. Here are sitting some of them. We got a lot of connections in our community to check data, to get the right literature. It's not very easy, as you can imagine, with the different languages. We had a lot of problems with translation, descriptions of the network elements or ecological data, and we had got a lot of help from you. Thank you very much for that.
Just a short remark to this. This is not our idea. The father of the ideas is sitting in the auditorium, and this is Martin from the Czech Republic. Many thanks to you that you started with that.
Yeah. So, thank you.